Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're going to be, for all our listeners out there, really trying to get a grasp on what's driving India's economic growth. You've landed in the right spot, and
Yeah.
especially, right, thinking about those of you prepping for the UPSC exams.
Oh, absolutely. This is crucial stuff,
It is.
especially when we're looking at this really insightful analysis from the Hindu that we're diving into today.
Yeah, I mean, it cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? I mean, talking about those sort of ever-present challenges,
Yeah.
things like corruption, the complexities of regulations here, and yeah, how those things just kind of constantly put a drag on India's progress.
Yeah, and I think what's really important to emphasize here is that we're not just talking about these sort of abstract concepts.
Yeah,
We're talking about real, tangible impacts.
right.
How these things actually increase the cost of doing business, why they scare away foreign direct investment.
Yeah.
Exactly, FDI. That's when companies from other countries are looking to invest in businesses here in India or, in infrastructure projects.
Right.
We're also going to look at how these things can actually, suffocate the
So-
very spirit of entrepreneurship.
Like stop it from even starting.
Exactly. Yeah. And ultimately, how all of this affects India's place, in the global economy.
He's handing, yeah.
Right. So our mission today is to really drill down, pull out the key insights, and really figure out why these issues are so important. I mean, they matter so much for India's future.
Yeah.
And, for you as informed citizens and future administrators, we want to give you a clear perspective on all of this.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this, shall we? Let's take a look at this persistent problem of corruption first. And this analysis from the Hindu highlights the India Business Corruption Survey 2024. And I mean, some of the findings here are pretty startling. 66%, a full 66% of businesses say they've paid bribes.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is kind of the story behind that number, right?
Because the survey also found that 54% of these businesses said they were actually coerced into paying these bribes.
Wow.
So you can see how this level of ingrained corruption, it's not just adding a direct tax on businesses.
Right.
It's creating this culture of rent seeking
Right.
that can spread through all levels of government, and this can actually block effective policy implementation later down the road.
It makes it harder to get things done.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that, as future administrators, you really need to think about.
Right, and it paints a picture that goes beyond just a simple transaction, doesn't
Yeah.
it? It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
And it seems like certain sectors are particularly vulnerable to this,
Right.
like the ones that interact a lot with bureaucracy.
Right.
We're talking labor regulations, taxation, pollution control, even just, getting your property registered.
Yeah.
Or vital sectors like health and pharmaceuticals. What really stands out is how these are all fundamental parts of the business environment.
It's not just an isolated incident here or there. It's affecting everything.
Exactly.
So naturally, this has a huge ripple effect across the economy, right?
Let's talk about the increased cost of doing business. It's not just those initial under-the-table payments.
No, absolutely not. You're spot on there.
Yeah.
I mean, the analysis really stresses that these corrupt demands, they can be continuous,
Oh, wow.
especially for small and medium-sized enterprises, those SMEs.
Right.
These businesses can face constant illicit demands just to keep things running smoothly.
Just to stay open.
Yeah, and obviously this impacts their bottom line, their ability to grow, to expand.
Makes total sense.
Yeah,
And then there's FDI, foreign direct investment.
right.
We know how important this is for India's development.
Oh, it's crucial.
It brings in capital, new technology, expertise.
The lifeblood.
But it seems like corruption is a major roadblock here. Oh, it's a huge deterrent. And the EY-FICCI survey that's mentioned in this analysis is really telling. I mean, 80% of respondents, 80%, believe that corruption scares away FDI.
Yeah.
And, if you think about it from a global investor's point of view,
Right.
they want stability, they want predictability,
Right.
they want to see transparent rules that are applied fairly.
Makes sense.
Corruption just throws all that out the window.
It creates all this uncertainty,
So much risk, yeah.
and that can make other markets look way more attractive.
Exactly.
So it's not even just the cost of the bribe itself, right? It's about the whole perception it creates, like a lack of trust in India's business environment.
Exactly.
And that lack of trust, man, they can really hurt the entrepreneurial spirit within India itself.
Absolutely. You've got these high compliance costs, you've got this tangled web of bureaucracy to deal with,
Right.
and then the possibility of having to pay off officials at every step of the way.
Just to get things done.
It's incredibly discouraging for anyone who wants to start a new business. Imagine, you've got this amazing idea, you're ready to go,
Yeah.
and then bam, endless red tape, potential for unofficial payments everywhere.
At every turn.
It can crush innovation, crush the ambitions of smaller businesses and startups. They often don't have the resources to deal with all that.
Right, right. And if companies are constantly having to spend time and money on corruption and bureaucracy, that's less money for growth and jobs. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The analysis connects the dots really clearly there.
Yeah.
The resources that are wasted on corruption,
Right.
they're not available for real growth.
Right.
Like expanding operations, R&D, hiring, it's a huge loss.
It's like money that's just disappearing
Yeah.
from things that could be really useful, really productive.
Yeah, it's like this vicious cycle of inefficiency.
Right.
Businesses end up spending more time trying to game the system.
Instead of doing, what they should be doing.
Innovating, serving their customers, being more productive.
Right, right. And as we talked about, this all impacts India's global reputation.
Yeah.
We want to be seen as a major player, a leading emerging market, but
But these issues, they hold us back.
yeah,
Corruption, inefficiency, they damage our credibility.
they make other countries look better.
Yeah, and here's the thing. A bad reputation makes it harder to attract foreign investment,
Yeah.
which then hinders growth and job creation, which further reinforces the negative perception.
It's the vicious cycle.
Yeah. We risk being seen as less competitive than other countries that are making things easier. Streamlining their processes, being more transparent.
Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into this regulatory maze, shall we? The analysis highlights the sheer volume of changes that are happening.
It's mind-boggling.
It really is. Something like 9,420 compliance updates in just the past year.
Yeah.
That's like 36 changes every day.
Every single day.
I mean, how are businesses supposed to keep up with that?
It's almost impossible. And unfortunately, this constant state of
It's
flux,
changing, always changing.
yeah, it can actually become another avenue for corruption.
Oh, how so?
Well, when the rules are changing all the time,
Right.
it creates uncertainty, there's a lack of transparency,
Yeah.
and that can be exploited
By who?
by officials who might ask for bribes to, clarify things
Oh, I see.
or to speed up approvals. It raises a really important question.
Yeah.
How much of this is just inefficiency? And how much of it is intentionally creating these, I don't know what to call them, these corruption pipelines, like established paths for illicit payments.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, at various stages of the regulatory process.
And I mean, this is something for those of you studying for the UPSC exams to really think about. Understanding governance is key here.
Absolutely.
However, the analysis does point to a positive example in all of this.
Oh, good.
The FSSAI,
Right.
the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India.
Right.
They've made a decision to only update food label regulations once a year,
Okay.
creating that kind of predictability. That seems like a good step, right?
It is. It's a step in the right direction. It shows that creating a more predictable regulatory environment can reduce ambiguity for businesses
Right.
and minimize the opportunities for corruption.
Which thrive on that uncertainty.
Exactly. We need to see this kind of thinking across all sectors.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another key issue is the slow progress on labor law reforms. It seems a lot of the old laws still have these really harsh imprisonment clauses.
Oh, yeah. And, it's important to remember that labor laws fall under what's called the concurrent list in our Constitution,
Okay,
meaning both the central government and individual state governments can make laws about labor.
I see.
So for these central reforms to work, they need buy-in from the states.
Okay.
Now, the central government did replace 29 old labor laws with 4 modern codes.
Which was a big deal.
It was.
Yeah.
But they haven't been fully implemented because state governments still need to put them into action.
It's still in limbo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So businesses are still stuck with these older, often more punitive regulations.
So it's a good example of how complex governance is in India.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even when the central government tries to make positive changes, the actual implementation, it can be a long and complicated process.
For sure. It shows how important coordinated action is and sustained political will at all levels of government
Right.
to actually make meaningful and lasting change.
Now, the analysis also points to a promising solution.
Yeah.
digital transformation.
Yeah.
It talks about how inefficient it is to, do something as basic as setting up a factory.
It's ridiculous.
It is. Hundreds of notarized documents submitted to something like 40 different government departments.
It's a nightmare.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is. And, not only is it inefficient, but it also creates so many opportunities for corruption.
At every step of the way.
Exactly.
So what's the alternative?
The analysis suggests a digital-first approach.
Okay.
And it's a good one.
So like this idea of a single business identifier linked to some kind of digital repository like DigiLocker or Digiatra.
Exactly, but for businesses.
Right, so how would that work?
So every business would get a unique digital ID,
Okay.
and it would be linked to a secure online database where all their verified documents are stored.
Oh, I see.
So regulators could access this information instantly.
Makes sense.
No more physically submitting the same documents over and over again to different departments.
That saves so much time.
And it would drastically reduce the chances of officials asking for bribes to speed things up.
So instead of having to juggle, all these different ID numbers,
Right.
PAN, GSTIN, CIN,
All of them, yeah.
with their own separate application and renewal processes, you'd have this one nation, one business digital ID.
Precisely. Consolidating all of those into a single identifier, that would simplify compliance so much.
You would just cut down on so much bureaucracy
Exactly.
and reduce those opportunities for bribery.
Oh, absolutely.
It just seems so logical.
Yeah.
And the analysis makes a good point. Even a small investment in this kind of digital infrastructure could pay off big time,
Oh, for sure.
in terms of attracting investors,
It's all about streamlining, reducing corruption,
building confidence.
and ultimately making India a more attractive place to invest for both domestic and international companies.
Now let's talk about global competitiveness.
Yeah.
The landscape is constantly changing,
Oh, it's a race.
and other countries are stepping up their game,
Big time.
improving their own business environments.
They want to be the best.
The analysis even compares India to the United States
Yeah.
and their Department of Government Efficiency.
DAROGE.
GE, right.
Yeah.
And how they're simplifying their regulatory procedures.
Yeah.
So if a big economy like the U.S. is making it easier to do business, what does that mean for India?
It means we have to keep up. Investors are going to go where it's easiest to operate. So the risk for India isn't just about slow growth.
It's about falling behind.
Absolutely. If we don't deal with these issues, corruption, bureaucracy, we're going to lose out.
On investments.
And talent, both foreign investment and our own domestic entrepreneurial talent.
People will just go elsewhere.
Exactly. To countries with more streamlined, transparent systems. And, this is especially critical as India tries to become a knowledge-based economy,
Right.
which relies on innovation, a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem.
So the analysis in the Hindu concludes by really emphasizing that India needs to move beyond these small incremental reforms.
Yeah, those little tweaks around the edges aren't going to cut it.
Right.
We need a more comprehensive approach, a holistic one.
It mentions the Jan Vishwas 2.0 bill as a starting point.
It's a start, but it's not enough.
We need deeper changes,
Like-
structural changes.
Exactly. Things like getting rid of those outdated imprisonment clauses and regulations, reducing the subjectivity in how rules are interpreted and applied,
Right.
and pushing for complete digitization of compliance processes across the board.
I mean, there's a real sense of urgency in the conclusion, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. The message is clear.
We need to act now.
Decisive action, bold action. If we want to attract global companies and create a thriving environment for our own entrepreneurs.
So to sum this all up for our listeners, especially those of you studying for your UPSC exams, this deep dive into the Hindu's analysis has shown us that corruption and bureaucracy are major hurdles for India's economic growth.
They hinder investment, stifle entrepreneurship, and weaken India's global competitiveness.
And the way forward seems to be streamlining processes, embracing digital transformation, and adopting a more holistic approach to reform.
And this leads to a crucial question for you as future administrators. How are you going to tackle these deep-rooted systemic challenges to create a more transparent, efficient, and ultimately more prosperous business environment in India? Understanding these nuances is essential for your UPSC preparation.
Absolutely. It gives you a deeper understanding of the complex economic realities that India faces.
Exactly.
So, if you found this discussion, based on the Hindu's analysis, helpful,
Hit that like button.
subscribe to The Deep Dive for more in-depth discussions that can help you with your studies.
Leave us a comment below with your thoughts. Any questions you have, we're here to help you navigate these important topics.
As you prepare for your UPSC exams. And just a reminder, this deep dive was based on analysis published in The Hindu.
Be sure to check it out.